Chapter 3. Roy Luther took his share of the chicken soup. Devola made it rich with homemade egg noodles floating around on its glistening top, and Roy Luther seemed to enjoy it. He let me spoon it to him 3 times a day, and after each feeding would try to smile his gratitude, and I said to Devola and the others that I thought he was gradually getting better. Devola sponge-bathed him daily and changed his nightshirt and bedclothing. The hair on his head grew long, and she took the home barber clippers and gave him a round, feminine haircut, and the black hair on his face flourished. She took his razor to it, but complained that the blade scraped, and said when I took my witch hazel leaves to Connell's Connell's general store, could I please get her a new one if it didn't cost too much? I said yes, but kept putting off making the trip. It was a long walk to the general store, 5 miles to it and 5 miles from it. Such a walk consumes shoe leather, so it shouldn't be done any more often than was absolutely necessary. Besides, I was waiting for Kaiser Peas to come. Most a week had passed now since we had saved him from dying, and I was anxious to get things out into the open between us so that we could get matters settled firm and sure. Morose and impatient, Romy suggested that maybe Kaiser had, after all, just gone on and died, but in the same breath reported smoke rising from Kaiser's chimney. Something had flown out of Romy. Now he couldn't be light and careless about things, but had to know reasons and be furnished explanations. He wanted to know how much this cost, and that, and this, and that, and where was the money for it all coming from. The Luther money had always been kept in a tin box on a kitchen shelf, and he took it down and counted it again and again, but couldn't make it more than $54.84 that it was. It isn't going to grow, I said, until we make it. He glared at me. How are we going to make it? I don't know yet. Don't worry about it. You keep saying that, but you're worried. No, I'm not. I'm just thinking. About what? Things. What things? Just things. I've got an idea, but it's hiding. I just have to give it time to come out and be recognized. If you had an idea, said Romy with somber logic, you wouldn't have to wait for it to come out and be recognized. You'd have it right there in your brain. Tell me about the land again. The land is ours now, Romy. All 20 acres of it. We going to work it? Sure. Come spring we will. What with? If we're our own people now and can't look to Kaiser Peas anymore, not for anything, we won't be able to ask him for the use of his horses or his tractor or anything. What'll we plant? What we've always planted. Cabbage? Sure. And potatoes? Yes. How will we get them to market? I don't know. I haven't figured that part out yet. Looks to me, said Rummy, like we need to figure out a lot of things. With winter coming on soon, the land isn't good for anything except to just lay there. Looks to me, said Rummy, like we need to figure out a lot of things. With winter coming on soon, the land isn't good for anything except to just lay there and rest. Except for Roy Luther's little patch of truck garden and a few hills of potatoes, Kaiser's picked it clean for this year. Our part of it, anyway. Kaiser's still got corn and stuff on his, but if you notice, our part has been picked barer than a bird's behind. It was true. Except for an occasional dejected stalk, a few forgotten potatoes, and Roy Luther's plot of vegetable garden, the Luther land had been plucked clean. Now it would lie fallow until spring. But in the meantime there was this little knot of an idea tucked away in some forgotten pigeonhole of mind, resting there, just waiting for whatever it would take to prod it back to useful life. I know when this happened. It happened during the blackest part of one night, when a turbulence of thick mist rose up out of the bowels of old Joshua and made watery trails across the face of the moon. My bed suddenly turned cold, and I left it and went to the window and looked out, and I thought I saw something. A figure kneeling in a blur of white haze on the dark grass. I thought it was Devola and called out to her. Just when I did, it all dissolved, and I moved back from the window and stood there for a minute, feeling the rise of a slow excitement. And then I went across the hall to the room where Roy Luther slept and tiptoed in past him to the chest that had been my mother's, and removed the afghan that she had knitted in the last year of her life from its top, and opened its lid and dug down and found it. A big, thick volume that had belonged to Cosby Luther, named A Guide to Wildcrafting. And with the excitement in me beating hard, I carried the book to the cold kitchen and built a fire in the wood stove and sat beside it until the night was gone, and read about ginseng and mayapple and golden seal and all the rest of the medicine plants that grow wild in the green forests of Appalachia, plants which drug companies the world over gladly pay for. Wild gold, I said aloud, and the fire in the stove crackled afresh, and in the slowly lightening yard, Ima Dean's pet bantam rooster crowed. Kaiser came that morning. Came riding across the sun-drenched fields on his big chestnut roan. When he got to our front gate, he reined in and hollered for Roy Luther to come out, and Romy started from his breakfast chair, but I waved him back, went out, and confronted Kaiser by myself. His sickness hadn't improved Kaiser's looks any. It had thinned him so that his clothes hung limp and his skin hung haggard. His yellowed eyes were lackluster and his mouth was wrinkled. His roan was pawing the earth, his hooves sending up little geysers of black dust, and I said to Kaiser to kindly move him out of my flower bed. Couldn't he see he was sitting smack in the middle of it? Kaiser pulled at the reins and the roan moved backward. Kaiser said, "Where's your daddy, Miracle?" "He's sick in bed, and it won't do you any good to holler for him because he can't move and he can't talk." "I'm glad you rode over, Kaiser. There's a little something I need to talk over with you." Kaiser passed the back of one hand over his mouth, studied me for a second, slid down from the roan. Tolerant and amused, he said, "Mary Cole, I pity the man you uns marry. Do you know I ain't ever seen you when you didn't have something to talk to me about. You understand now that it don't pain me none. Most times I enjoy it, but this morning I just sure can't spare the time. I come to talk to Roy Luther." I let him go by myself. I let him go by himself. While he was gone, I took a stick and repaired it as best I could the damage the roan had done to my primroses, planted in thick rows all along the outside fence. The crystalline air was sharp and cool in my lungs. Romy came out and said that Kaiser was in the room with Roy Luther, and should he go back and listen at the door. I reminded him that the Luthers were not door-crack listeners, and sent him out to Roy Luther's garden to pick the last of the sweet corn and tomatoes. He protested some, but he went. Kaiser was with Roy Luther about 20 minutes. That the visit shook him up some was written all over him plain as day when he came back out to me. With steps weighted slow and expression weighted heavy, he came and put his hands on the top rail of the gate and looked down at me, and with a queer kind of sorrow in his ugly face, said, "Well, you see how it is," I said. Kaiser pushed the gate open and came outside and leaned down and took the stick out of my hands. "I thought you wanted them flowers to live," he said, "but you're a-killing 'em." I stood up and faced him then, eye to eye. "So you see how it is with us now." Kaiser tossed the stick away. He sucked his teeth and ran his tongue around his dry, cracked lips. "Well," he said, "he's in a bad way, sure, I see, sure." "Well, He's in a bad way, sure. I've seen his kind of sickness before. It'll worsen. It's about the only thing to be said for it. It might, I said, and maybe not. If I had my way, I'd have him to a doctor, but he'd never stand still for it. It'd just kill him quicker. Kaiser hooked a thumb inside his belt. He turned his head, tilting it so that his hat fell back a little, and studied Sugar Boy like he'd never seen it before. He said, "Well, I wished I knew how to advise you, Miracle. I sure wished I did, but I don't. If it'd be any help to you, you could stay on here a while, at least a ways till spring. I wouldn't charge you nothing. Just having a roof over your heads ain't going to settle everything, you know. I don't suppose Roy Luther's got any money saved." I said, "No, he hasn't gotten any money saved." Oh, that was a got. "No, he hasn't got any money saved." Kaiser took his hat off and scratched his head. "Well," he said, "that's too bad. A fella always should lay by a little bit for a rainy day. I sure wished I knew how to advise you, Mary Call. I sure do, but I don't. Only thing I can think of is maybe the country people in town would help you. Or the county people." I'm having a hard time today. Let me just back it together. Sorry, guys. "The only thing I could think of is maybe the county people in town would help you. Give you enough to live on until something else turns up." "Yeah, you could do that. I know a feller over in Pumpkin Holler gets $90 a month from the county people. Told me it wasn't much of a job to talk 'em into doing it. If I be you, I'd study it over, Mary Call. You know, you're gonna to have some help from somebody." I looked out across the ravaged fields and saw Romy, a vaporous figure in the distance, moving around in Roy Luther's garden. He had a gunny sack slung over one shoulder, and the bottom of this bulged, but not much. A few ears of corn and a few tomatoes, and that'll be it, I thought. And then I thought, that's been Roy Luther's whole life. A few tomatoes and a few ears of corn grown on somebody else's land from seed paid for by somebody else. And for every scrap always having to toady and apologize. Always having to say yes, Kaiser, and no, Kaiser, and thank you, Kaiser, and I'm sorry, Kaiser, for what? What had he been thanking him for all this time? What had we been thanking him for all this time? You don't thank people who set you in bondage and hold you there year after wretched year. You hate them. And if it isn't in you to hate, as it never had been in Roy Luther, then you do the second best. You pick up and get out. And if that isn't possible, you start making plans to make it so. Do something. Do anything. But don't just stand there and let people beat on you and then thank them for doing it. Kaiser, who had left off studying Sugar Boy and had moved on out to stand beside the roam, was saying, "Well, I best be going on. You let me know what you aim to do, Mary Call. Like I say, you could stay on here till spring if you was a mind. I wouldn't charge you nothing. That way you'd have a roof over your head for the winter. I'd be losing money. This house would bring a good rent if I was a mind to let it out to somebody else, but Roy Luther and me has been friends for a long time. It'd be mighty poor stick if I didn't do what I could for him now." Something inside me began to work. I could feel its cold, slow spread pushing up to crowd my ribs and my heart and my lungs. Devola and Ina Dean had come to the front door and were anxiously, silently looking out at us, and Kaiser turned his head and looked at Devola. In the distant garden, Romy shifted the gunny sack from one shoulder to the other. He's too thin, I thought. All of them are. They deserve something better than what they're getting, but there's no one now except me to even try to get it for them, and I don't know how, and I'm scared, but here goes. I said, "Kaiser, I can tell you right now what I aim to do. I've known since the night Devola and I and Romy and Ima Dean saved you from dying what I aim to do. I aim for me and my family to stay on here in this house you gave us, and come spring we'll work the land you gave us, and we'll be our own people now and not look to you for anything, and don't you look to us for anything either, and that's the way it's going to be. Kaiser's interest in Devola fled. He blinked and jerked around to me. What, Marigold? What's this? I gave you this house? I gave you this land? Who says so? You signed a paper, Kaiser. The night you were dying you did. It was a bargain between us. You said if we saved you from dying, you'd give us the house and the land around it, 20 acres of it. And I agreed to it and wrote it out, and you signed it. You want to see the paper? Yes, answered Kaiser, and watched me kneel again and take the paper from my shoe. If I let you hold it while you read it, I said, can I have your word that you won't tear it up? Kaiser's eyes had filled with a still, glittered expression. It acknowledged who I was, my stature in this business we were transacting. So strangely it did this, as if each of us, in that moment, had suddenly been converted into having a respect for each other. It wasn't true, of course. I had no more respect for Kaiser Pease than I had for a clod of dirt, and his for me could be measured about the same. But just in that moment, for some reason not explainable, there was an unspoken exchange of respect and trust. Let me see the paper, said Kaiser, without promising not to tear it up, and I handed it to him.